In this video, I'm going to show you how you can paint light onto your photos using dodge and burn. This is a really simple technique, and I've got a free action for you to help out with this on your projects. Okay, if you're new to the channel, my name is Chris. I do tutorials on creating photo manipulations, composites, movie posters, special effects, that kind of thing in Photoshop. So if that's your thing, make sure to subscribe to the channel and check out the other videos. Okay, so for this tutorial, I've got this photo here of Thanos. This is the Hot Toys Endgame Thanos, which I did a quick shoot of upstairs. And what I'm going to do is immediately run this action. Play, and I'm going to walk you through what all these layers are, what they do. I'll tell you how you can grab this later on. So dodge and burn is primarily about getting a adjustment layer you can kind of paint on that will raise the bright parts of your image, and another one you can paint on that will lower the dark parts. So the dodge is going to be the light part, the burn is going to be the dark part. In both these cases, these are curves adjustments layers. So if I click here on the properties, you can see the dodge pulls up all the kind of midtones and the shadows and highlights either side, and then the burn does the opposite. Both of these have a black layer mask, which means nothing is showing through. So the idea is we're going to paint on the layer mask with a pen flying across the room. We're going to paint on the layer mask with a white brush, and that will show through some of this effect. On top of that, there's also saturation adjustment layers clipped to both the dodge and burn to make sure that the colors don't go too crazy as we apply this effect. So it's pretty simple. You just need a brush, B on your computer. Make sure you've got white paint. So you can see over here, black's my foreground color. So you can just click the arrows down here or press X. That's going to flip those around. And now we've got our paintbrush. So you got to kind of decide how you want to do this in terms of the size of your brush. So I like to start quite broad, have big strokes. So this size looks about right. And then as I apply both the dodge and the burn, then I kind of reduce the size and work down. Up top here, you want your flow really, really low. So about 4%. And what that's going to do is allow you to build this effect up gradually. So with that done, we're going to start on the dodge layer here, and it's simply a case of gradually painting over areas you want to lighten. So as I mentioned, what I like to do is do kind of broad strokes first, just raise the brightness of the overall piece or knock the shadows down in areas where I don't want things as bright. And then what you can see is if you look at the layer masks on both of these dodge and burn adjustment layers, take a look at the dodge. So this is the areas I've painted. You can see they're not completely white. Now that's important because what that does is it gives us room to work with the detail. So when I make the brush smaller now, I'm going to come back in a second and work on the detail in the image. It means I can work these up to lighter tones if you like. Same with the burn. You can see there on the adjustment layer, that really hasn't done much. So again, that gives you the space to work in the detail and work up the highlights or burn down the shadows respectively. So I'm going to come back to my dodge. I'm going to zoom in, and then what I like to do is hit the kind of raised highlight areas. So this is where you're really going to see this effect start to pop. So it's just a case of going around your image and bringing up all these highlight areas. What you're going to see in a moment when I complete this is this setup gives you a lot of control to really be able to tweak this and adjust it without needing to go back and do any more painting. So these adjustment layers are really, really powerful for that, because with curves, I can go back in and tweak that curve and dial it in, make the effect more pronounced or back it off if it's too much to get a great final result. With photos like these, I really like to hit the eyes. So certainly for sort of fantasy, sci-fi stuff like this, characters, I want the eyes to pop. So a good amount of dodge on the eyes to make those pop out is pretty important. I'm going to skip over the body. I'm going to go to the burn. Now, The burn is kind of a personal preference because depending on what you're working with, if you're working with a piece like this where the shadows are already quite deep, you may not want to do too much in the way of burn. But a little tip for you, try not to think about burn in terms of going straight for the dark points, because effectively it's not going to do anything. What you want to do is hit the points that are near to dark. So if I come over here, kind of where his face is, you can see there's a shadow here. I can just accentuate that with a bit of burn. So I'm not going straight in here where it's really dark. I'm going around the edges. Same here. This is going to make the chin a bit more pronounced, where it's not completely black. These kind of lines on his face, all the frowns in his head, we can accentuate all those. The other thing with doing a burn and accentuating shadows is what it's naturally going to do is make the brighter colors pop. So one thing I like to do if you've got an area like this is, and I think I'll take up the brush size for this. If you go around the edge where you've got a lighter area and do a little bit of a burn around there, you can see it creates more contrast between the light part of his head and the dark background. Now, what you probably don't realize is as I've done this hasn't actually done a burn on the lighter parts of his head. So that's part of the trick with this action, because the way I've set this up, if you see here on the burn layer, you've got blending mode options set. So if I double click on this and bring up the blending options here, you can see I've used blend if. So what this does is it applies the burn, but it will only apply it to areas that are already dark. So when I did that burn around his head, what it didn't do was burn the kind of bright spot on his head, thus sort of increasing that contrast effect. Done exactly the same thing on the dodge layer as well. So likewise, if you're doing the dodge, it's only going to pull up the bright areas. It's not going to touch the shadows, which will mean both these layers do what they're supposed to do. One raises light areas, the other darkens the darker shadow areas. Bit of a mouthful. So one thing you can do with this is play with this. So I could come in here and take this down, and in the case of our dodge here, this is going to make the areas I've painted sink more into the shadows and pull those up a bit more. So you've got all these adjustments you can play with. Same with the burn. I could come in here, pull that back, and likewise the burn's going to start to take more effect on the lighter areas. So that's one thing you can play with. And then you've got the curves itself. So I could grab the midpoint here in the curves, pull that down, make it even darker. That looks a bit extreme. Same on the dodge. You get the idea. So this is really all there is to it, and then you end up with a result like this. What I usually do with something like this is take a layer stamp. So Control, Shift, Alt, or E. On Mac, that's going to be Command, Shift, Option, E. Hopefully. I think I've made a mistake because I've done it on the dodge layer. Yeah, I really should have done it on the one above. Never mind. It's not going to make too much of a difference. And then we can give this a bit of sharpening. I like unsharp mask, and that will really punch those details out as you increase the sharpening. So don't overdo it with sharpening, but you'll find when you do a dodge and burn, if you work with a nice sharp image on top of it, it's really, really going to make your image pop. So there we go. That is pretty much the final result. So if I go back to what we started with, there it is. And there's the finished dodge burn piece with the sharpening on top. You can see it's a much, much more pronounced, interesting result than what we had coming out of the camera. So that's all there is to it for this. If you want to grab this action that I used for this, this is part of a set of retouching actions that you can grab over on my Gumroad store. It's completely free. Catch is you got to subscribe to the channel. So if you subscribe and go to the channel page here on ToyShooter, there's a subscriber only video there, and in the description for that you'll find a special link to this retouching action set which will allow you to download it completely for free. So go over and grab that. If you've got any questions about this video, if anything didn't make sense, leave me a comment below. I'll do my best to answer. Thanks again for watching, and see you in the next video. Head to ToyShooter.com for more tutorials, resources, and help with Photoshop compositing. You can also subscribe to my free newsletter by visiting shoot.toys in your browser or clicking on the link on screen. You can also follow my work on Instagram at instagram.com/shoot.toys. Subscribe to the channel to watch a special subscriber-only video, which you'll find on my channel page after subscribing. Lastly, you'll find links to all the places I've just mentioned in the description for this video below.